Welcome back to the show. I have Dani Tan with me today, and I cannot wait for all of you to dive into today's episode because Dani has an amazing story that is going to resonate with you. We're going to talk about all things salary negotiation, identity, and of course, we want to have some chisme from Dani about her money and her finances. Why not? So, Dani, thank you for coming to the podcast. How are you?
Hi, gracias. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And when you put it out in the universe of, hey, you're looking for someone, I was like, oh my gosh, we're totally aligned on like values and mission. So I'm excited to be here and share.
Thank you. Now, I know you because we had the opportunity to collaborate through a speaker series. And so that's how I found you. And I looked you up and I said, I have to bring this mujer to the podcast. And yes, you said it, the values align. But for those listeners that are not familiar with you, can we start by sharing what is your background? And yeah, let's start with that. What is your background?
Yeah. I'm Asian Latina. I'm Puerto Rican, Filipino, and Chinese. My mom's side is Puerto Rican. My dad's side is Filipino and Chinese. They both got to the US in their mid 20s. So I was born in the burbs of Chicago. I lived in New York for 11 years. That's definitely a thing, part of my story. And then the last year or so, I've been traveling while being an entrepreneur. So I'm constantly going somewhere. I was just in Antarctica and I'm going to Africa for 2 months tomorrow. But that's a little bit on my background. I'm also first gen. So I'm first gen in the sense to graduate college in my immediate family. So while my parents didn't quite finish, I ended up being the first to graduate within my family. And it's just snowballed from there of what my life was able to become and the opportunities that came.
And I love how you're like, I'm going to Africa like it's another Tuesday. And no, please, mujeres, take note of these. She didn't hesitate. She didn't put her shoulders down. She just said, I am going to Africa because this is the life that I chose for me. And I, like, when you said that, I was like, yes, I want us to normalize that. Like being able to work and enjoy life because not everything is for tomorrow. So I just love that for you so far. I'm like, yes, what else is she going to tell me? So now, Dani, you mentioned being first gen, and I want to talk about the finances behind you going to college. So, did your parents help you, or how did you find your college career?
Yeah. So we did not really talk about finances when I was growing up whatsoever. We did not talk about finances when I was growing up. And it was really interesting when I grew up in general because I was born in the city of Chicago, but then I moved to the suburbs of Chicago. The suburb that I lived in was a very affluent suburb. But ironically, which I don't think many people know, we actually grew up like we lived in assisted live. What is it called?
Affordable
Affordable
housing.
housing. We lived in affordable housing within this really affluent suburb, which I don't think anyone realized. And it was like a condo basically, which was really nice and beautiful. But with that, I was surrounded around people who had tutors, who had parents who could afford for them to go to school. But I had no idea I was living in this bubble. My parents, I think, wanted just me to have a normal, regular, don't worry, everything's fine. And so we did not really talk about finances whatsoever. So when I was applying to schools, I had applied to the school, I went to University of Arizona, and I had no idea what came next when it came to how do you pay for school. I had no clue. My parents were like, we got it taken care of. Don't worry. It's under wraps. I think one of my aunts had told them you should apply for financial aid. So I know that I had gotten some financial aid. I think I had gotten some scholarships. But besides that, I was just living life. I went to school. I had usually had a part-time job in high school, but for university, they were like, no, just focus on school. We'll give you like a stipend every single month. It'll be okay. And then when I graduated college, and I finished in 3 years, and the reason why is because you'll find out throughout my career, I'm a worker. I'm a worker, busy bee. Like school is great. I love learning, but I wanted to get out there and be able to make my own income, generate money for myself, and not feel like I was in debt to anybody or anyone was like taking care of my finances. And so when I graduated, I was like, great, I'm done. Everything's amazing. I had no idea. I just thought everything was taken care of. So I was gifted on my graduation a book. Maybe you have heard of it. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And so when I read that book, it has all the basic financial things to learn about, which is how to pull your credit score, how to budget, how to invest, how to save. And when I did it, I pulled my credit score and I saw that my credit score was abysmal. And I had also seen and I found out that I had all these student loans. So I went to my parents and I was like, what's going on? And they're like, yeah, we pulled out student loans for you to go to school. I had no idea. It was like not a conversation that
On,
we had.
hold on. You had
Ah,
no idea.
no idea. I was like, Okay. And it,
Was it, Danny? What was the amount of the loan that you
yeah.
magically appear? Talk about the opposite of abundance. It's like, here, you have a student loan day.
Yeah, you graduated, you think you're going to go out in the, and for those of you who want to know, I graduated in 2010, so the market was definitely not ideal. But I was like, oh, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to work hard, and everything's going to be great. And I was like, I'm in the hole. And so I found out that I had $25,000 in loans, and it was across multiple loans. It wasn't like in one. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And then I learned about interest rates and how interest rates take effect on the loans that are taken out. And so I had found out, yes, they had paid for what they could pay, and there was financially for what they could cover for that, but then there was still a part that had to be made up. And so, with that being said, I found that out. And the other thing that I had found out, which I don't even know if we're put this in there too, is that I had gone to a doctor's appointment when I was in college, and the bill was sent to my childhood home, not to where I was living. And so, one of my parents received it, they paid it, but apparently the collectors had said they never received it. So that sat on my credit score forever, even though we tried to combat it and write a letter and all that stuff, but they left it there. So I basically was in the hole the moment I graduated college in 2010 of credit score and debt, and I had to figure it out. And that's what this book, the book and learning and trying to figure out like what is financial literacy. I have no clue. That has been my destiny. So I always say money wealth coaches are doing the world's work because we don't, no one knows. We don't really talk about it.
Yeah. And I can only imagine also, like, obviously, aside from the shock that you had about your student loan day, I'm also thinking about your parents, like the weight of having to find the money to help you. And I think sometimes that we often forget that our parents also go through the financial struggle. Even like the, hey, we're not going to share this with her. Like, I can only imagine your parents, man, what are we doing? Like the mindset and maybe the guilt that they felt. But now here we are. And I'm so chismosa and I love talking about money. How did you end up paying your student loan debt?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was from reading this book was I consolidated all the loans, like made it into one loan. So I had one fixed interest rate. That was the first thing. The next thing was I was like, okay, how do I tackle this debt? And so I was saving like no other. So I had created a budget for myself. And I wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to live my life. I was still saving, but being able to go to restaurants and hang out with friends and all that stuff. But I think the biggest thing was that I was committed to saving for that too. So I would get my paycheck and I would automate my paycheck so that a percentage would go to emergency savings, a percentage would go to my student loans, a percentage would go to like my fixed expenses, and then whatever remained. And that is what I just continue to do. And I was like, I'm just going to keep working at this until I can. And then the other piece was I just knew that I was going to have to make a chunk of change in order to pay it off. And salary in general and salary negotiation and figuring out how I'm compensated and being able to navigate that helped me also pay off all of that as well. And so I want to say I paid it off by, I think it was like 2020, it was the pandemic. And I was like, I'm going to pay the rest of this off. I can actually afford to just pay this off. And so that is what I did. But it definitely took a lot of negotiating and a lot of just navigating my career in order to do that. And if I ever got a big bonus, I would take a percentage of it and I would pay that off too.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like you really wanted to just get rid of it.
Yes,
You were committed, right? And I think that is the missing piece that a lot of people have is that they're not committed to paying off debt because they have normalized it. Like they normalize having it, they normalize the struggle, they normalize like becoming besties with it. And now I also teach my clients to get comfortable with it and actually leverage it for like real estate investing or other things. But when it comes to credit card, I want them to pay them off because we need to learn how to play the game. And just based on what you said to me right now, sounds like you really learned how to play the game. So kudos to you. Now, throughout this conversation, you mentioned salary negotiation a couple of times. And that's another thing that a lot of the listeners struggle with. They hear negotiation and they automatically go, no, I'm
yeah.
not going to do it. I don't want to negotiate. Forget it. Bring me the blanket so I can hide behind it. Why do you think that Latinas struggle so much with salary negotiation? And did you, because you so confident to me. I'm like, man, she was like negotiating left and right. Like I can only picture you, but were you confident negotiating your salary at the beginning?
No, definitely at the beginning, I was not. And I would say the biggest hang up is the gratitude. I'm just grateful that I have a job. I'm just grateful that I have benefits. And there is so much, of course, to be grateful for. We should be grateful for those things. We should be thankful for what we have. But there's a way to be grateful without it being a detriment to how you value yourself and how you allow others to value you. And I think that was a big thing that started to evolve for me, where for a long time, the whole thing that I was getting fed, which is, I get it, is be happy that you have a job even in this market. Be happy that you have health benefits. Be happy that you can pay your bills. That stuff gets us to a certain point. But then if you want to get to the next point, you have to learn a whole different level of skills, but also be able to take your mindset there also. And so to do that was a process for me, let me tell you. And so I started out making like 45K, and then I ended up getting to a quarter million, 250. And so to get to that trajectory though, when I first was making 45,000, I remember being like, okay, I was living in Arizona. That's how much I was making. I was working in like sales, and then I was moving to New York, and they asked me, how much are you making now? And I said, oh, I'm making 45,000. And so they're like, okay, so we'll pay you 45,000. Did not have any clue what I was putting myself into. One, I was making 45,000 in Arizona, which is a different cost of living than living in New York.
Yeah,
Number
I
two,
would say that.
right? Mira. And what year was this? I can't remember. I think it was like maybe it was 2012. And so I was like, one, it's a different states, different cost of living, moving costs, different industries. And I had basically pigeonholed myself by saying what I was making before. And that had put me in a bad position, let's just say. And so I didn't know any better. So I walked away from that being like, wow. And I would say the biggest takeaway from that is if you do not prep before you go into any conversation about your career, and for those of you who don't know, I'm a career and leadership coach. For those, if you do not prepare in advance about conversations about your career, if you don't have a vision of what you want your salary to be, when you get asked on the spot, you just like shoot from the hip. And then you're like, that's what I put out in the universe. And so that is what happened at first. I stayed within a certain company for a period of time, and I would get like the incremental merit increases, or I get promoted and I get 5 to 10K. But then one boss, one mentor, she had given me a promotion. She gave me a piece of paper. She slid it to me and she was like, this is how much we're able to give you this year. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, thanks. Cause I'm just being grateful. And she was like, no, I want you to push it back. And I want you to tell me that it is not the right amount and that you want actually double that amount. And if you don't get it, that you'll be looking at other opportunities. And I was like, oh, my, what?
And wait, but my Latino parents told me to be grateful for having a girl day.
I was like, I can't be on the street. I can't not. What if I ask for this much and I threaten that I'm gonna leave, and then all of a sudden you all let go of me and I'm fired and then I'm on the street with nothing? And she was like, no, just do it. And she's like, this is the game that you have to play to get people to move and what it is that you want. And I was like, what? And so that had started to open it up for me. Okay, it's not even just about asking for more. It's about understanding what is the value of the work that you do, the job that you have, and being able to push for that, because it does take more effort and energy for them to hire somebody else, even if they're a lower salary, than it is for them to retain you, especially if you're doing well and you're making the company successful. So that was the one thing. The second thing, this is what I'll say. I have living in New York, I have my fair share of, let's just say, having relationships with people who are in the tech industry, who are in the finance industry. One of the things that I learned very early on was that I have to make sure that I'm going in and I'm really understanding what is out there for the numbers of the salaries and based off the industry. So even if you work in one industry, understand what's happening in other industries and what do those salaries look like? And then what is most important to you? Do you want to stay in your lane? Is your focus your industry and your mission, and that is what you need to be? Or do you want to make a jump at some point in time for maybe a higher salary that can help you do something in the future more aligned with what you want to do? And I was like, So that was a big wake up call for me. And one of the next moves that I ended up making, I ended up doubling my salary because they wanted to offer me basically half of what I was making. I did the market research. I was like, they're going to offer me less and it's a higher title, but it's a new industry. What do I know? And then when I did the research, I went back, I negotiated, and they ended up giving it to me and I doubled my salary. But the biggest takeaway was that they were just trying to see what they could get away with when it came to what the offer was going to be. And so it was just about me stating my own, but I had to get that confidence from somebody else being like, no, people will try to take you for what it's worth. And I didn't know that out the gates.
And sometimes what I've seen too, just from helping people, is we're very last minute, right? Like the Latino mindset of, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. But when it comes to salary negotiations and really just like asking for more money in general, preparation is so key. And one of the things that I also teach my clients is definitely know the market value, definitely know like what industries are around you, but also come back to the financial goals that you have. Because if you want to retire at 45, you should not accept the first offer, right? Like also, in addition to the salary and the market value, add that extra money that you need to max at least one investment account, at least. Most of my clients do too. And that is how we also help bridge the wealth gap and the Latina wage gap, because it's huge. Now, Dani, I also want to say, what would people thinking offering you like Arizona prices for New York prices?
Listen, I have worked in 5 different industries. I've pivoted careers 5 times. And each industry has different pros and cons. I'm not going to say like one is good and one is bad, but some people are going to try to work you over for their budget. At the end of the day, an organization and a company is looking out for the best for themselves and their bottom line, period. Even if you have a manager who's amazing.
Say that again, please, for the people behind me. Say it again, please.
At the end of the day, the organization, the company is concerned about them and their bottom line, not the people. And with that being said, you have to look out for yourself when it comes to this stuff. Because even if you have a manager that loves you and adores you, sometimes their hands are tied based off of the budget, based off of the executive board, based off of HR, whatever it is. And so you have to know what it is that you want. Like you said, what are your goals? Where do you want to be and when? And what does it take to get there?
Of this conversation so much, because now I'm thinking you pivoted 5 times, and there's a listener or 2 right now, and yes, I'm talking to you, that is completely afraid of leaving their industry because they just love it and they don't see themselves like elsewhere. And yes, I'm talking to you, my listener on the non-for-profit sector, who thinks that is going to make a big difference by sacrificing your health, your money, and I can go on. But what would you say to someone that is like comfortable? Because being comfortable does not make you money. So what would you say to that person that is, I think I'll just be here for 40 years in this industry?
So I have some nonprofit folks too. I feel it here. I feel it here. I want to make a difference. I want to help people. You can make a difference and help people and be wealthy, just so you know. Just so we know here, it can be both. Period. I would say if 5-10 years were to go by and you were still in the same place, would you have any regret? And if you feel like you would have any regret, what would it be? And what do you feel like you would need in order to help fulfill that? Because I think the biggest thing is that I'm comfortable and I feel good and I'm happy here. But then people typically go by in life, and if they haven't stepped out of the bubble, if they haven't tried to push out, there usually are these like little thoughts that are lingering that have been sitting there of, oh, I wonder one day, or, oh, I woulda, shoulda, coulda. But the more we start to age, those things start to grow with time. Listen, I hang out with a lot of folks who are retired. Don't ask me why. And that is the biggest thing that comes up, is this thought of, I should have taken this risk. I should have done this thing. And pivots can feel very risky, but they're not if you do them strategically with a plan.
Yeah, I've stayed in an industry for 17 years, and that was actually my dream career. Like I always wanted to be there. But when I had to pivot into entrepreneurship, it was so scary, and now I love it. I'm like, I get up, for example, today, by the time we're recording this podcast, I took my girls to school. Then I went straight to the gym. We had breakfast before leaving the house, all of us. But then after that, I got to the gym. I put in 1 hour of my workouts. I was feeling amazing. And I looked around, and most of the people that are there in the morning, they're seniors. And I was thinking, what if we normalize younger people starting their day by taking care of their body. That's one of my values. I value health so much. And then it made me wonder too. I wonder if any of them right now feel like I should have taken care of my health sooner, right? Which brings me back to what we're talking about, which is salary negotiation. There's so many people that don't negotiate because they're like, I just really want to make a difference. And that, like you as a leadership coach, of course, that you hear that part. But also, I've seen it. I've seen the numbers of my clients when they have been in the industry for 10 years and they're like, I don't have a retirement plan. And I'm like, what are we doing? And I want to ask you about you. We're going to come back to you because you're an entrepreneur. Your income right now is inconsistent, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my income is inconsistent as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. So how does Dani plan for those months when your income is inconsistent, right? Because now you don't have a consistent paycheck. And yeah, how do you afford to go on this vacation like to Africa? Excuse me, like I want to know.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So this was the big thing we were talking about when it came to negotiations, pivots, and being able to do that strategically to plan for a life that you want. And so that was a big thing that I did. I knew that I wanted to pay off my loans. I knew that I wanted to have a credit score at a certain level. I knew that I wanted to have an emergency savings that I was at this amount, that I wanted to max out certain accounts at these amounts. And so to do that, I wanted to continue to work, climbing the ladder, negotiating, pivoting in order to get into a salary bracket that was going to help support those things. I did that. And then I got to a point where I felt secure. I knew that I always wanted to have a business. Here's the thing, folks. If you have your own business, you decide who you want to serve. You decide who you want to help. It's the same thing if you want to pivot industries. You pick the organization and who they help and who they serve, and you can still keep your piece and some kind of balance of it, some kind of dance of it. So once I got to that part, I was like, okay, how do I build my business? I worked with a business coach myself, and then I started making that grow while I was still within corporate. So I still felt like that safety security blanket. And then once I started making a certain amount of money within my business, I was squirreling it away. Same exact things that I had practiced in my personal finances, I was trying to carry over into my business in the sense of, okay, how much of an emergency fund do I want to have? And that really was going to be my runway. So if I were to go into business and I didn't have a single sale for 6 months, do I feel like I'm secure? And so that's what I continued to save. And when I had that nest egg for that, and I felt like I hit the goals that I wanted for personal, I was like, okay, here we go. I'm off to the races. And once I went into my business full time, I had the security of my runway for personal and professional. And then the next thing was having my business go. So anything is the same concept that I was applying for personal, where in that situation, bi-weekly or weekly of a paycheck come in and it automates the separate accounts. Now, when it comes to inconsistent income, it's a similar process. Anytime I get paid, even if it is, a bigger amount one month and a smaller amount another month, or no amount another month, it doesn't matter. The moment it comes in, it breaks out into the appropriate accounts. Now there are different kinds of accounts. It's not all just 401k savings. It's also what's for my taxes, what's for my payroll, and then all of those things break out. So that way, at any given time, if I have a big influx of money, those accounts have it sitting there for a rainy day. And even if I have nothing that comes in for that month, I still have that account from when I had the previous influx from other months. So that creates that safety within that, plus knowing that I have my backup plan. But I'm like if y'all can't tell, I'm very much, I like to have the security. I'm not like I'm risk averse. I'm very calculated risk taker.
Yeah.
And so that helps me feel secure. But you have to find your safety of what it is and then
Yeah.
build it out based off of that.
And I learned that you're sharing all of these, and that's what I'm hearing. You're taking risks, but you're not like, me vale, or
No.
I almost did a bad word. I was like, hold on, let me come back. You're very like, this is my goal. This is what I need. These are the systems and the processes that I need to implement. This is the mindset. And also, this is the help that I need to get in order for me to achieve this. Like you mentioned, you're a business coach. And one of the things that I have learned, so I've just finished my draft of my upcoming book, Cash Libre. And one of the things that I did is I did a lot of research on the habits and the qualities of those women that are very successful, Latinas, because that's my book is for Latinas, but I also been studying Latinas that already have the wealth and the companies and the success that whatever it means for them. And investing in themselves, every single entrepreneur and CEO that I interview and that I study for the book, they are always asking for help. They are not like, oh, I'll do it alone, or I'll wait until I have the money to invest. They're just like, no, I will find the money so I can hire the help. As a first gen, did you had any trouble knowing that was also part of your success recipe? I need to hire a coach. And did you wait to hire a coach? Because a lot of people do.
I never asked for help for a long time. Hyper independent, super hyper independent eldest daughter. Gonna do it myself, gonna figure it out myself. It's gonna be fine. No one can do it better than me. That used to be like my thought process. Now I absolutely do not think that at all. I'm like, someone else can do it better and I'm gonna ask them for help. But when it came to hiring a coach, it was like I was frustrated. I was frustrated in my current situation that I realized that I was making all these organizations millions of dollars. And I was like, why am I doing this versus going and building something that I want to build? And when I felt like I couldn't figure it out on my own, and I was like, I'm not special, not in a negative way, but I'm not special. Like, people create businesses every day. So if they create it every single day versus me trying to figure out where to start, why don't I just go and find somebody who knows how to do it and teaches people how to do it? And that will help accelerate me to go where I want to go versus feeling like I'm stuck or I'm waiting or I'm trying to figure it out. And that was my first entry point to getting a coach. But even then, I was like, I didn't know what I was looking for. I was just searching for like people who had businesses. And then that's how it started. And when I was like, what, this is coaching? They're going to like give me the roadmap and guide me towards what it is I need to do and help me focus on what I want to focus on. And that kind of just, it snowballed. It completely snowballed. And
I
I,
love
yeah,
I'm like,
snowballed.
and I love it because now you have a business that takes you places. You are a leadership coach, but you also get hired as a speaker, which creates multiple income streams through your business. And I'm like, I love that. Now, let's go into actionable steps. What are like maybe your top 5 things that you recommend people to do if they want to double their salary this year?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So if you want to double your salary this year, there are a couple of things you can do. The first thing that I want you to do is I want you to look at what your current salary is. What's your current salary? What is your current roles and responsibilities of your job? So if you look at your job description of what you were hired for, what is it that you do right now in comparison to what your job description is? So I want you to write it out and I want you to like highlight or note where the discrepancies are. So for example, your job description says this and you're doing like 30% more than that's something to note. Now look at those two things. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to look at what do you want your next step to be? Do you want your next step to be a different title? Does it need to be in a different industry? What do you want your next role to be? What does that look like? And then I want you to go and look at the market and look at job descriptions that have those roles in there and what those pay scales are. And I always say, don't look at a couple, look at 5 to 10. You want to get a median average of what the pay salaries are. So do that next and say, okay, this is what I see for about 10 job descriptions. What are the roles and responsibilities? What are the skills? How does that compare to what you're doing now and what you were hired for? What do those pay ranges look like? How does that compare to what you're doing now? Now, when you're doing that, I wanted to really ground in you what your belief is of what your number is. Because what we were talking about when it comes to salary negotiation, you can look at the numbers, you can know all that stuff, but you have to believe the number or else your negotiation is going to go no bueno. So, no bueno. So you have to believe what it is. So this research, while it sounds like really like boring or tedious, is to help you build your belief and your confidence of what it is that you do work-wise and what it is out there. And then the next thing you need to do is figure out, okay, what is the timeline that I want to get from where I am right now to this ideal role and this salary range? You figure out for yourself, does this feel comfortable for me to hit in a year? Is it 6 months? When is it my next cycle review? Then the next step is, if it is a role and a job within your current industry, within your current organization, you go to your manager. Not in a year. Once you've figured out the plan, you set up a call and you set up a time to meet with them and you say, hey, I've been thinking about my future here at this organization, at this company. I'm really excited about the work that I do. I'm currently here doing this. This is where I'm looking to go. Ideally, this is the job description that I'm excited about. This is the range that I want to be in order to reflect that. How can we work together to help me get there? You're not like giving ultimatums. It doesn't have to not be a telenovela. There's no drama. It's about bringing in the person who's supposed to be responsible for your success. And the thing is, you're going to get a lot of feedback. If they are positive and they want to help you and they give you a plan, you create that plan with them and you have that timeline. if they're like dodging it, that also gives you feedback of the environment that you're in, the kind of support that you're going to get, which also helps make a decision of what it is you're going to do next. So that was a lot, probably more than five. But
like, we're gonna watch the recording of these. Like, so good. And another thing that you said too, you talk about the manager being there to help. And I'm thinking like that one or two managers might be like, damn, I wish I was doing this thing right now myself, right? So that goes to say that sometimes we love the job so much, but the manager is not there to help us grow because they're dealing with their own mindset, with their own struggles. And so I love that you touch on that because a good manager will want you to negotiate. A good manager will want you to think about the next move, whatever it is, especially if you want to climb the ladder. And I was like, Dani, where were you when I was in corporate?
so many of my coach friends.
So now I just love this. Thank you so much for those steps. I love it. I'm like, this is so good. This is so in alignment with our mission to help Latinas get more money and, of course, help bridge the gap. Now, before I let you go, I want to ask you, what is your definition of wealth?
Freedom and flexibility. That's what it means to me. It's all about time. If the freedom and time and flexibility to spend with your loved ones, to spend with your family, to spend with your friends, to spend on your hobbies, to spend on your health, I think that is ultimate for me.
Love it. Now, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm mostly on LinkedIn, but I would say go to my website. You can go to danitan.com. That's DANITAN.com. And on there, you have my email list and all the lovely things to connect with me.
Thank you. I love this conversation. I love it so much. And I love that you're going to Africa. And I love that you're helping Latinas and women in general just secure more money because we need to really work on that. And it has been a fun conversation. And I love your laugh, by the way. I think that was like, just love it when you laugh. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.